Well, hello and welcome to this special Today's Homeowner Podcast. I'm Danny Lipford along with my buddy Joe Truini, and I have an opportunity to interview a lot of people over the years, but my producer Brandon McFarland and Joe Truini have something up their sleeve here where they're kind of turning the tables on me a little bit, and I'm trying to be the willing participant with my finger on the mute button. So Joe, you got me a little nervous, but I'm ready.
You should be nervous because your mute button only mutes you. It doesn't do anything for me. So I'm just going to keep talking.
Well, I've got the door cracked over there, so if I have to get up and run, I'll just get up and run. But you know, we think about how Joe and I have been around a long time, have known each other for over 20 years, and just thought you might be interested in knowing a little bit more about our backgrounds a little bit. I had an opportunity recently to kind of interview Joe a little bit about all the different things he's done. So I guess it's my turn on the hot seat. So proceed there, Dan Rather.
Okay there, Danny. Don't get too nervous. This should be a lot of fun. Yeah, I think it's a great idea for listeners of the podcast to get to know us a little bit and know our background and how we ended up here.
Right, sure.
And Danny, it's a great story. As Danny mentioned, I've known Danny we've been friends for 20 years and worked together that entire time. And so I know that you grew up in the panhandle of Florida.
Yep.
In the town of Marianna.
That's right. Yeah.
So before making your way to Mobile, I first need to know, what was it like growing up in Marianna back then? I mean, I know this is inland a bit, right? So we're not talking about on the coast, south of the Georgia border. Mm-hmm. And I know your dad was an educator, right?
Right.
And your mom was a homemaker, like most moms in those days.
That's right. That's right.
And so tell me, what was it like growing up in Marianna?
Well, it was the town at that point was probably about 6,500 people. It's not really much bigger now, probably only about 7,100. I guess small towns like that don't really grow a whole lot. We're about 50 miles from Panama City, which we had an opportunity to go to the beach from time to time. Of course, when I got the driver's license, maybe that frequency picked up a little bit more than that.
I bet.
And of course, back then, gas was 40 cents a gallon or less. So you could go a long way with a couple dollars in the gas tank. And
that's right.
So we down there. But it was a very traditional small town, had the square downtown and the courthouse there, and you walked everywhere, you rode bicycles everywhere. So it was, looking back on it, it was a pretty cool way of growing up, particularly in realizing that so many people that I still know, that I went from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. I realized that that's an exception more so than a commonality with other people.
Yeah, that they're still in Marianna.
Yeah.
Well, some of them go back.
Yeah, some of them
go
are.
back regularly.
Yeah. Some of them are. Some of them we just get together from different towns and so forth. You get together a couple times a year and reminisce a little bit and go right back to the way we were many, many years ago.
Yeah,
but
isn't that funny how time just disappears when you get back with old friends?
Yeah, when you're talking about a lot of years.
I wanted to mention, I just realized something that when I said you go back pretty regularly, you were back not too long ago because they unfortunately were in the path of a hurricane.
Yeah,
and
man.
Danny was very kind to go up there with some generators and tools and help them out because they got hit pretty bad. Everyone heard about Mexico Beach, and I think that was the same storm, right? That went north of there.
Yeah, it's almost completely due north of Mexico Beach, about 50 miles, and people that aren't familiar with hurricanes, they may not realize what an impact that actually still has. I mean, yes, it may lose a few mile per hour in its speed, but when you're still up above 130, there's a lot of things that happen, especially when it's been years and years since a hurricane's hit a particular area. Things are more brittle. Things are, there's some, deterioration.
A lot more trees and vegetation to be blown over.
Exactly, and so they're still digging out. There's a lot of people still living in tents down there, so certainly think a lot about the old hometown there, but hopefully everything. It's a resilient bunch of people down there, so they'll
I bet
they'll come back strong.
Yeah, well, many of it, we certainly hope so. Many of you might not know, but Danny is a trivia machine. He knows thousands of little facts,
useless
tidbits of information, many of them which are actually true. I've discovered some of them are actually true.
Wow, you've been Googling me a little bit, huh?
But I know something about Danny's hometown of Marianna that I'm not sure he knows. I'm going to try to stump Danny here.
All right.
Danny, do you know how Marianna got its name?
I've heard the story, but I cannot remember that. It seems like it was a prominent person's daughter, but I'm just guessing almost.
Yeah, very good.
Is that
very
right?
close. Yeah, Marianna was founded in 1828 by a Scottish gentleman, and he named the town after his daughters, Mary and Anna.
That's right. Yeah,
That's how it got its name.
Yeah,
Marianna.
so I was close. It wasn't too
Yeah,
too
you're
far
very
off.
close. Yeah. And so, so you grew up in Marianna, and you went to high school there. Did you play any sports during your time?
Oh, I
in
played a
Marianna?
little football and loved baseball. Played a lot of baseball, and then it just wasn't as much fun when you got into the 11th and 12th grade. I had other things on my mind there, including the start of my very first business when I was 16 years old.
I was just going to ask you that. What was your first paying job? This might be it.
And I had this really cool car. It's quite a babe magnet, really. It's a Pinto Runabout, brown.
A Pinto.
Yeah.
A Pinto Runaway. The girls would see it and they'd run away from
Yes,
the Pinto.
that's pretty much it. But no, I mean, my very first job was loading watermelons during the summer, 75 cents an hour.
Wow.
And man, was that so cool when one of those watermelons slipped out of your hand and you were able to reach down in there and grab
I bet that happened accidentally around 12:30.
Sometimes you had to get something in you. And but,
where were you loading them from? Like from the farm into the truck, or from the truck into the store?
It's funny. I mean, I lived in town, so I wasn't really a farm boy. But we would the first thing that you would do when you're in your apprenticeship program is the farmer would give you his knife. And you would walk ahead of everybody, and you would cut all the rotten watermelons out, lift them up, and pile them in a pile. And that's pretty much what you did for 3 months of the summertime. Oh. And, back then you had your shirt off and your short pants and tennis shoes.
No sunscreen, of course.
No sunscreen, just burn you completely up. Fried bologna sandwiches. Yes, sir. Nutrition.
I remember those. Yeah.
And then the second year, you were able to start carrying the good watermelons to the row where the wagon would come down, and then you would have to pump that watermelon up over the edge and get ridiculed greatly if you were not able to throw it up over the edge like that. And then the third year guys, the career watermelon pickers, they were up catching them in the wagon as you were going along. So it was a.
So that would be the good. That was you were hoping to attain.
I didn't make it to that third year. I started embracing grocery stores and air conditioning.
That's where I got my stuff. My first job was in a grocery store.
So I worked at Ivy's food store for a long time, and so anyway,
it's a great place to start, though. In supermarket.
But then I started my business, Danny Lipford, Rock and Roll Promoter. Yep.
What?
I had 5 bands that were just old garage bands, that played here and there. And I went around and I signed all of these bands up to a little contract where that I was their manager. I would get them booked at different places and got my 10%. And then I started renting out the school gymnasium, even the college gymnasium one time or several times. And I would put 2 of my bands in there, and they would play for a dance. So I would charge to get in. I got 10% off of them of the money that I paid them. I thought that was pretty slick. And then I even set up a little concession stand and would sell and have one of my some of my friends sell sodas and potato chips and things like that. So
I didn't know that you could have followed that track and been touring the country.
Well, until I made a bad error, I probably did this maybe 10 or 12 times and was making money every single time, putting away money. Thought, okay, this is it. I am going to be a big time promoter. Until I made a little business error and booked in a band who was a phenomenal band, but nobody knew who the heck they were. So there were not many people that show up that day, and my entire life savings were completely wiped out, $675. And that was it.
So no one knew of this band because they weren't local. So
I brought them in from Atlanta, so they had driven down 6 or 7 hours. Heck of a band, gigantic speakers and gigantic. I mean, it was phenomenal. But there was almost more people in the band than there were in the crowd, so I got a little problem there, and so I completely wiped out my savings and decided, I'm going to try a different path. So that's
now I guess most people know that before Danny became this media mogul with the TV show and the radio show and the podcast and the website, that he of course had a construction business which still exists, Lipford Construction. But I know you had a couple of construction businesses or jobs along the way. So how did you transition to construction, and when did you and why did you make the move from Florida, from Marianna, down to Mobile?
Well, I came over to Mobile to go to college. So in August of '75, came over to go to the University of South Alabama. My older brother, was actually living here, still does, and he had actually been involved. He was several years older than me and actually had a full-time job, but he had been in a motorcycle accident and was unable to work, but able to go to school and actually use the VA bill to go back, and decided to go back to college. So I said, well, he's going to college. He knows his way around. He's got a place for me to live. So it was very easy to make the move over during that time. And along the way, I found out about a little side job with this guy that did that. There was a real estate guy that would buy these little crummy houses, and then he would patch them together, and he'd sell them literally for $100 down and $100 a month. I'm talking about some little small, little cribs.
One-bedroom cottages, I guess.
And so he kept, and he says, well, can you do this? Yes, I can. Can you install carpet? Absolutely. And I just would.
That's the only acceptable answer. You always say yes.
I would use common sense, and I would paint, and I would landscape, and I would repair rotten wood. I just, kind of had helped my father quite a bit do that, and it's a whole lot of common sense when you get right down to it.
Absolutely. That's
right. So I kept doing that, and after a while, and then really got kind of tired of college after a while, and decided to do this for a little bit. And continued on. And finally, it hit me one time. Actually, I was on a trip. I used to do a lot of backpacking trips.
Right.
And I would save up a little money, and I'd get together with a few of my friends, and we would, kind of pitch in on gas, pitch in on real conservative approach to the food, because it was all about the backpacking. And we would go to Colorado and Canada and all over the place. And on one of those return trips, where at that point, usually when you're in a vehicle and you're driving with maybe 3 guys for about a month, at that point in the trip, you're really not talking to one another.
Right.
So I had a lot of alone time, and it all of a sudden hit me. I needed to be in business for myself. I can remember the day driving across the middle of Kansas. I actually still have my little journal where I had this epiphany that I needed to go in business for myself, that I was a hard worker, I knew a little bit about marketing, I like to fix things, like to repair things, and it just took over. By the time I got back, I had my full business plan written in this little bitty journal. Like I say, I still have it. It's kind of cool. And so I came back and gave my 2 weeks notice. And so many things happened right then that someone, a friend of mine, I told him what I was doing. Well, I know someone that needs some work, and word of mouth. And suddenly I had several jobs lined up, and I walked out right to a job, and I've been busy, and that's 40 years ago.
Is that crazy? Well, one of the questions I was going to ask is, how did you learn your carpentry trade? And it sounds like you learned it by just doing it. You're out on your own. I mean, I learned it through my dad because he was a remodeling contractor, and I'm not sure how else you would have learned it.
Yeah.
But that's a good way as any. You just start doing it.
I did that, and then I also, when some of the projects there that were just too big for me to do by myself, the guy I worked for had this old gentleman, and I remember Mr. Vick. And Mr. Vick was at this, in my mind right now, it seemed like he was 7 foot tall and weighed about 120 pounds. And the guy could work me to death. I think he was 72, 73 years old.
Wow.
He would work my little butt to death because he was so efficient in every movement he made, and he was so good, and he taught me so many things. And and also back during the summers, one summer I worked with when I was still in Marianna, worked with a little repair crew. And they were repairing schools. My father was with the school board, so he got me on with the school board thing there. And I would go along, do a lot of repairs like that. So I learned a lot from a gentleman there who could not speak.
Right.
He was completely mute. And and it just traumatized me that they were pairing me with this guy that could not speak. And so I didn't know what I was going to do. And so I just kind of... And it's amazing, after a couple weeks, he and I could tell jokes back into, and he had his own language and kind of a grunting and a way that he did his hands and symbols and things, and you could almost utter words, but not really. And I got to know all of his little symbols and all of this little thing, and it's amazing how quickly we were able to, I remember like it was yesterday, how easy it was to be able to communicate with him, and he would show me something and move his hands around and do different things, and then I would do this, and he could read lips pretty well.
Right.
And so that he also taught me an awful lot without saying a word.
Yeah, he must have been sorry when you moved on because you had to break in another.
I know, had to break in another.
Who knows if someone
traumatized kid? Yeah.
Who knows if someone else would have caught on as quickly as you did? Yeah, I hold a lot of stock in being, having common sense and just smart enough to just pay attention and figure it out. And that's what a lot of this is, right? The business that we're in.
But also, I remember going to the mall and buying a Sunset book about framing and about carpentry, simple thing like that. And in it had all of these diagrams that would show a floor system, and it would show, those little pencil drawings, and it would show the wall, show the headers and all that. And I could look at that and just about memorize the whole thing so that when I was building a wall, it would come back to me. I don't know how I know how to do this, but this is how you do it. And deck books and things like that. So I bought 4 or 5 books, and I would leave them in my truck. I wouldn't be out there like standing out on the job site reading them. That looked kind of bad.
Exactly.
So I would go over to the truck in there, and I would look it over a little bit, and then I'd walk back, and I could use it. And I did that for a lot of years. That was way back before the internet has that same type of opportunity.
I remember those Sunset books, and Ortho had a line of books.
Exactly. That's right.
But you and I kind of take that for granted, but there are a lot of people who would look at those drawings and couldn't make heads or tails of it.
Right,
Where is that? Is that vertical? What is that? Why, But there is a skill or a talent, an inbred thing, I don't know, that you can look at it. Unfortunately, you discovered that.
Yeah,
that
it's
talent.
something
That's
just
great.
being able to memorize it and to picture it and then to go back and utilize it.
So when you started your first construction business, it was in Mobile at that point.
Yeah, it was basically just a handyman service, just me doing things, because people, as it is today, people always said I can't find anybody to do anything.
That's right.
So I would do anything. I mean, I could do electrical, I could do plumbing, I could do yard work, I could install gutters, just about anything. So anything to stay in business, and then I just built it up from there. That was Labor Day 1978 is when I had my very first job on my own.
What was that? Do you remember?
It was actually building a small greenhouse for a gentleman.
Oh,
and he was off that day, and which most of the world was, but me. And so I was building this little bitty greenhouse, and I had such a way of building these things. I could build one just about the entire thing in a day. And I had a helper.
This is a wood frame?
Yeah, 2x2 treated with fiberglass panels on it and a storm door on the front.
Right. Wow.
And so I remember building that, and I guess the neighbor didn't like it too much because it was kind of close to his property line, which was none of my business. It was movable, so it wasn't that big a deal.
Right.
But I think the owner might have gotten into the Labor Day juice a little bit that day. And about the middle of the day, he had enough juice that he went over to the fence there where the guy was complaining, and they had a pretty terse argument over there. At that point, we
While
said,
you were building the greenhouse, this
is
going on?
It was just short of a knockdown drag out with wives pulling them apart. And I thought that was a great time to take lunch. So we got in the truck and left, hoping they would settle it down. By the time I got back, it was settled down. I finished the project, and then I collected my first check late that afternoon, just about half hour before it got dark. And I thought, you know what? This is the greatest thing in the world. I look over my shoulder. I have this project complete. I look at homeowners. They're happy. I got a check in my hand, making more than I would have if I'd have worked for 2 weeks. And it was on then. I loved it.
Yeah. And so then, now was that get licensed as Lipford Construction, or were there other businesses in between?
Yeah, it was Lipford Remodeling is what I had back then. Later on, I changed it to Lipford Construction, just not to because I did used to build a lot of new houses and commercial buildings and things like that, which I lost interest in because just. Everybody knew me as a remodeling contractor, so it worked very well. Anytime anybody thought of remodeling, I got a phone call.
Yeah. Okay, so that through hard work and determination, you grew Lipford Construction into one of the most successful remodeling businesses in Mobile. But what was the sort of light bulb moment where you thought, you know what, this could be a TV show?
Well, actually, it never happened quite that way because I would go out and speak to garden clubs because it was marketing. I just wanted to market things. Right. I would write little articles for the newspaper they would pick up from time to time. I started doing home and garden shows, so people started knowing that I was someone knowledgeable in remodeling, and I was offered a guest spot on a local cable access show. Kind of Wayne's World almost, and so
was it in someone's basement?
It felt like it was a basement. It strangely enough, it was an old funeral home that had been remodeled into a studio. It was a little creepy with the floor drains and that kind of thing, I'll have to admit. Yeah, but every Monday night at 8:00, and I was supposed to be a guest on the show, and just the week before the show was to start, the person that they had lined up had a little argument there with the station, disagreement in some manner, and they split ways, and they turned to me and said, "Hey, it seems like you can talk pretty well. You want a show?" And I go, "Well, wait a minute. What's this going to cost me?" They go, No. We're going to pay you $100 a week." And I thought, well, this is great.
And you said, well, I can talk.
Great.
Absolutely.
So every Monday night, 8:00 for 81 weeks, I had my own show, a little show called Better Living.
Wow.
And it was low budget.
For almost 2 years.
It had a little a phone on the desk, and I sat there and talked until that phone lit up. And you would see me look over at the light. And then when the light would come on, I would push the button and go with a terrified look in my face, "Hello and welcome to Better Living. May I help you?" It was just about that exciting. And so I kept taking calls and all of a sudden my phone, weeks later, my phone just started ringing off the hook at the office. "Hey, I saw Danny on TV and everything. He was talking about the screen porch he built, and I'd love to have him build one for me. Hey, I heard about the deck, heard about the kitchen." And essentially, in about 60 days, my business tripled in size.
Unbelievable.
So
I couldn't pay for that kind of advertising.
Oh, no doubt about it. So I kept doing the show, and of course, some of my practical joker friends, you would have been right there amongst them.
I would have called immediately.
Yeah. Well, no, they'd have their wives and girlfriends call because they knew if they said anything, my face would turn beet red, and that they would embarrass me because I can see, I got turned red really, really easily. And so they would have a ball with it. They would get on there and say, "Yes, I'd like to ask you about my kitchen renovation, but first of all, I just want to say you are looking hot tonight." And I would that would be it. I would turn red, wouldn't know what to say. I could hear them in the background just laughing up a storm. So finally I decided, you know what, I need to figure out how they get these cameras out on the jobs. And I had all these jobs going on because my business was so busy. And so I started getting them out on the jobs a little bit and figuring out how to do that. And then it just got bigger and bigger and bigger until it's at a certain point I was able to get more and more markets and get more and more stations, and accidentally started making money on the television show while it still remained a great marketing tool for my construction business. So needless to say, I was one busy character right then.
Wow. Well, you're busy now. I can imagine then just trying to keep all those balls in the air.
And that basically lasted for 10 years. So 10 years. September 18th, 1988 until the first part of 98 is when I was able to take the show national at that time.
Right. That's when Today's Homeowner magazine got involved.
Right. Today's
That's how Danny and I met, because I was writing for the magazine.
Because they had found out just before they were to launch the first issue about a unique project I had. It was actually, I was doing a speech up in Washington, D.C. At a builder show, and one of the writers overheard me talking about this crazy project. And he tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, to be, eavesdropping, but, here's my card. We might be interested in it." Well, I called them, of course. They came down, did this great photo shoot, and I ended up in the first issue of Today's Homeowner magazine, and which had been, as you know, it was a 75-year-old magazine that had been retooled to Today's Homeowner from originally, what was that, Home Mechanic?
Mechanics Illustrated.
Yeah, Mechanics Illustrated.
From the 1920s.
Yeah.
Right?
And so that's when it all started, when we launched the show at that point, me as a partner to Today's Homeowner magazine.
Yeah, it's amazing. And we should also mention that while Danny was getting his business started in Mobile, he met his lovely and talented wife, Sharon, which he's been married for over 30 years, I guess, at this point, right?
Yep, 36 years.
Three beautiful girls and
Thank you.
now 3 beautiful grandchildren, including one that's only like, what's it, 4 weeks old, 5 weeks old or something?
Three or four, something like that.
3 or 4 weeks old.
Little Lucy Ann doing really, really well.
Oh,
so
good.
busy household over there.
Yeah. And of course, his eldest daughter, Chelsea, as the co-host of the TV show with Danny. Okay, I have a bunch of questions here that are a little off the beaten path, but I think it'll get us to find out a little bit more about you. Okay, what virtue do you most admire in other people? It could be family members, friends, associates you work with. Like what like single virtue?
Straightforwardness, not beating around the bush, being frank, but not cruel. And just saying what you think and not tiptoeing around things. I've always appreciated that. It's like when we used to work with a lot of engineers and people go, oh, man, how do you deal with those people? Well, because they know what they want and they'll tell you what they want.
Right.
So that's absolutely, without a doubt, no hesitation. I like good, frank, straightforward people.
Yeah, that's a great virtue because it's becoming more and more rare, I think.
Isn't that the truth?
I know you're a big fan of live music. I didn't realize you were a former promoter.
Yeah, man.
That's something new I learned. You're a big fan of live music and gone to countless concerts. Can you name 2 or 3 of your favorite all-time shows? And are there any artists you have not seen yet that you would like to see?
I really love the group Counting Crows, and I've been to many Crow shows. I've seen them in New Orleans. I've seen them in Atlanta. I've seen them in Birmingham. But one of my favorite shows is, I have these wonderful trips with my girls during the summer where I'm able to cash in my Sky Miles. So I can get us pretty much, the whole family, pretty much anywhere in the world for free. And one of the trips that they wanted to take is to go to London. So we rented a flat in London near Hyde Park, just around the corner from old Kensington Palace, of course. And so I told Chelsea, I said, check and see if there's any concerts there. Well, just so happened that the O2 Festival, which is a gigantic festival there, was opening the night we were getting there. And it was in Hyde Park. So we're talking about walk across the street from our flat to go there. Right. I said, book us a ticket. So she booked tickets real quick before we even knew who was going to be there. The headliner that night was the Counting Crows.
That's incredible. Now, you had already seen them at that point.
Yeah.
That wasn't the first time you saw them.
Let's see. I think I may have seen them once, but they might have been the first time I ever saw them. I'm not sure.
Maybe that's why you became a fan.
But it was really, really special. There were 65,000 people there. I was about 20 foot from the stage, and I remember this big, you know what a jib arm, the big jib arm camera, because they were taping the whole entire thing. And this big, I remember this, it was light mist of rain. We had ponchos and we were there. And this big jib arm came across the crowd, across the stage, and then just almost kind of settled right in front of us. And I remember going, well, that'll be interesting to see. Well, I'll be darned, years later, I was over at a buddy of mine's house. And he was watching, I want to say it's called Palladium TV. I think it's no longer now. I think MTV bought them. But it was all about live concerts is all they showed. And I was kind of watching out of the corner of my eye, and I said, I think it's the Counting Crows. And about that time, that camera rolled around, and there's me with a big old smile on my face. And my daughters, well, all of us, and Sharon with the ponchos on, just sitting there, it was a group smile, even though we were dripping wet and everything. And I remember that over and over and over. And I've seen it
That's crazy.
2 other times since then. But without a doubt, that had to have been one of my favorite shows. And also, when my wife, for my birthday present, bought me tickets on stage at the Counting Crows. Wow. And I was basically in this little 2-seat riser thing, close enough that the drummer kept leaning over, handing me his sticks, and so it was pretty wild.
Pretty close.
Yeah, that was.
Where was that concert?
That was in Oak Mountain Amphitheater, just south of Birmingham.
Right.
That was 1 year ago. Matter of fact, my birthday just passed, so it was 1 year ago I was there. That was an awesome night.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about traveling, and I know you and Sharon have traveled extensively, both home and abroad, but is there any one place you've not visited yet you've always wanted to go?
Well, we talk about that a lot, and, of course, Bora Bora comes to mind. I think it's just because I like the way it sounds. And I was
as the seas keep rising, it might just become Bora.
Yeah, that's true.
They might lose one of the Bora Boras. You better hurry up and go.
But Australia, New Zealand, those kind of places are great. But it's just such a tremendous plane ride. But I was surprised there with with going to Bora Bora, which is let's see, what is it? What's the islands? It's part of that islands of Tahiti. So it's Tahiti. Bora Bora is all the same. It's only 7.5 hour flight from Los Angeles. I told her I would take her there for her birthday
Flying
next
west.
year, and so she's looking into it right now. That's one place I think would be very interesting. But I've been to all 50 states, as you know, because you were with me when I went to number 50 in North Dakota. There are a number
1 year ago.
Yeah, exactly. There's 3 years ago. There's
3 years.
When you and I went fishing there.
Yeah, sorry,
There's a number of places that I've been to that Sharon has not been to. The Grand Canyon, the Grand Tetons, a few places like that I would love to take her. So we're going to find a time sooner or later to make it to some of those areas. And by the way, you mentioned the group that I would love to see that I haven't seen.
Right.
I would love to see Paul McCartney.
Yeah,
and
he's actually got a new tour, I think.
I know he was in New Orleans just a few days ago, and also Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Oh yeah.
So that might be two different crowds and two different concerts. But,
yeah, I think so. Yeah. All right, so you're a very busy guy. You got a lot going on. What do you do for relaxation? I know the number one thing might be to spend time with the grandkids, but let's assume that that's not very relaxing, or you don't get a chance to do that.
Yeah.
So what do you do for Danny?
I absolutely love to be underwater. I love scuba diving, and I have a great playground here that I can go scuba diving. Then I found out about spearfishing.
Oh, okay.
And so when I can go diving and I can shoot a nice, healthy grouper, a triggerfish, snapper, and I'm able to bring that home and prepare it and eat it that night, man, that is a awesome activity. And, of course, along with that, love the boating, love the fishing. So
sure.
I love
We live in a paradise. In Mobile and the Gulf there.
Yeah, a lot of different opportunities on that. So I like that a lot. I used to play a fair amount of golf, and I'll probably get back to golf because I did enjoy that a lot. But I always felt like I was, when I would go play golf, my kids were at home and things like that. I always felt like I neglected them. So I finally decided to kind of hang that up for a few years. I'll get back around to it sooner or later.
Yeah, and it does take quite a bit of time.
Yeah, it sure
does.
does.
The whole day.
Yeah.
Okay, I know you enjoy reading autobiographies. Of all the ones you've read, which ones did you find most memorable or most inspiring?
Well, a lot of the autobiographies are pretty good. The biographies tend to maybe even be better. It's a thin line between the two because you don't know what. But I'll tell you the one telling the life story thus far of Eric Clapton was pretty moving. I mean, that was pretty wild. Yeah. James Taylor was amazing. I don't know why that dude's still here. I mean, I like him a lot, but he had some really serious.
Eric Clapton as well.
Eric Clapton
they
as
struggled,
well.
Yeah.
And I guess that's one of the things I like about autobiographies and biographies is, the rags to riches, back to rags sometimes kind of thing, and how, they found their way through, navigate through life. And when they were about as down, about as far as you can get, to where your friends and your family have given up on you, and somehow they navigate back and become, remain very relevant and live a nice long life. So I like that kind of thing. I mean, not that I want to get, reach the bottom. I feel like I reached enough of the bottom when I was building this television show and the debt that I incurred along the way in dealing with all of that. But it's inspirational to me. I like history. I like biographies. I like real stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's also, some of those can be cautionary tales. We can learn a lesson without having to hit bottom.
Right. Yeah, no doubt about it.
Okay, we're running out of time, but I have several really quick questions.
Okay,
right?
sure.
So,
blue.
Excuse me?
That was my favorite color, blue. See, it's telepathically, because you're about to ask that question.
Okay. No, I wish I was going to ask that question.
Good.
What superpower would you like to have? Besides the ones that you already possess.
Yeah, right.
If you could have a superpower, I've thought about this actually. What superpower would you have?
Wow. Let's see. I guess I used to think X-ray vision would be kind of cool, but that gets you in a lot of trouble there. And then being able to hear really, really well, that would get old. I wouldn't like that. I guess just being able just pure strength. I mean, I'm a pretty strong fella, but just to be able to have that strength that you could, pick up the side of a car if you needed to, or there's so many times when you just strain and you just wondering, how much, harder it could be. It'd be kind of cool to be able to just reach over there and lift the trailer up while someone else is changing the tire or something along those lines. So,
like
I think
the Incredible Hulk without the green skin.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I think that might be it.
All right. Here's some quick ones. Chocolate or vanilla?
Vanilla.
Yeah, I would say the same thing.
Yeah.
Spring or autumn?
Spring.
City or country?
Country.
Seashore or mountains?
Boy, that's a tough one.
Yeah, I know.
It's turned into seashore. It was always mountains. I always went to the Rockies, always went to the Smokies, always did that. But there it was always hiking and a lot of strenuous activity with my girls all, overruling me on the family trips and going to the, to the islands. And
well, you were outnumbered 4-1
I know.
between your wife and the girls.
But it made me realize how much more relaxing that is, and that's why, you travel a lot of times. So I'd have to say seashore now.
Yeah, good. Flintstones or Jetsons?
Definitely the Jetsons.
Okay. Yeah. Sailing or motorboating?
Motorboating. That sailing is no. Yeah, you know what? I rented a sailboat.
I know you've gone sailing.
Yeah, I've gone sailing with Bob, who runs my construction company, who's serious about it, a little too serious to work yourself to death. And but I rented a sailboat down in the British Virgin Islands, and the clanging of those darn brackets, clang, clang, all night long.
Oh, you don't like that? Some people love
I can't
fall
stand
asleep
that. I had duct tape.
Good thing you don't have super hearing.
I had duct tape out there trying to duct tape those darn things.
Okay. Country or rock and roll?
Probably mostly country now, but I'm real. I push the button all the time, and I have such a diverse collection of music from Eminem to Frank Sinatra to James Taylor and everything in between. So I get restless pretty quick on all of that. But I probably listen to more country than I do anything else.
Okay. Well, the two are less distinct than they used to be, too.
Yeah. Well, they've kind of merged a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. NASCAR or SEC football?
SEC football for sure.
Yeah, good, because they'd kick you right out of the state.
Yeah. I mean, I watched a lot of NASCAR in past years, but for some reason, I guess like the rest of America, starting to lose interest in it. And but I'll tell you what, on a Sunday afternoon, you have a night, you go to church, you have a nice meal, you lay back on the couch, and that NASCAR race will lull you right to sleep. And I'm not a big napper, but those NASCAR naps are some of the best.
Yeah. Okay. Couple more, the final two. Which do you prefer, going fishing with me or going fishing with me?
Going fishing,
a trick question.
Going fishing with you, and I'll have to say, I went. You didn't ask me about my fishing trip the other day, which I'm glad you didn't, because I was completely skunked. I didn't even get one little bitty nibble. That was a long day, and if you'd have been there, I know the luck would have been different.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? And finally, if you could say something directly to all the fans of today's homeowner, what would that be?
Well, that's good. Let's see. Maybe appreciate your confidence, appreciate your enthusiasm, and appreciate you keeping me on the darn air for 22 years. That's that's a big one and everything. But to really return back to the well of appreciating good, straightforward information that we're always going to give, and people, constantly benefiting from that and saying how much they've gotten from here and there. That's pretty cool, and keep that coming. We love it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I just want to end it by saying, I've had a great deal of fun, learned a lot working with Danny and being his friend, and there's no one who deserves his success more than Danny. I mean, what you see on TV and what you hear on the radio is exactly it. He's a genuine guy. He cares about other people. He's got great faith, family, and friends, and And I'm just proud to call him a friend. So thanks for everything, Danny. I really appreciate it. And thanks for sharing part of your life with us.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate all of you listening to the podcast. And we'll do a few more of these little extra things. And matter of fact, we might do one about baseball, because that would be an easy one. I could say, hey, Joe, tell us about those Yankees. And then I could walk off, go get some water, relax.
You'd go have lunch.
30 minutes, 45 minutes later, I could come back. Well, that's great, Joe. Thanks for listening. So we'll have to do this again. It's been a lot of fun.